Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited you're here today because we're going to explore a life-changing book that I know many of you will find incredibly helpful. It's called Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen. If you've ever struggled with overthinking, emotional suffering, or have felt stuck in the chaos of your own thoughts, this book is for you. We're going to unpack why we overthink, how our mind often deceives us, and how to finally find peace and clarity by changing the way we engage with our thoughts. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll have practical tips and deep insights to apply immediately to your life. Whether you're trying to manage stress, anxiety, or just want to live a more peaceful life, this video will give you tools to transform how you think and feel on a daily basis. So, let's dive in. The core idea: why our thoughts lead to emotional suffering. At the heart of Joseph Nguyen's philosophy is a powerful insight: the source of most of our emotional suffering isn't the events that happen to us, it's our thoughts about those events. But what does that actually mean? Let's break it down. Every day, we experience countless situations that evoke different feelings. You might get into an argument with a loved one, experience failure at work, or even just have an off day. In these moments, we tend to believe that the external event, the fight, the failure, the bad mood, is the root cause of our distress. However, Nguyen argues that the true source of suffering comes from how we interpret these events. The fight, for instance, might be an isolated event that can be resolved, but your mind tells you a different story: they don't care about me, I'm not good enough, this relationship is doomed. Suddenly, a simple argument becomes much more than it is, and you find yourself spiraling into self-doubt, anger, and sadness. This is the mind's tendency to create narratives and assumptions that amplify emotional pain. Nguyen highlights that the mind is not always a reliable interpreter of reality. It's constantly filtering the world through the lens of past experiences, biases, and fears, creating thoughts that are often misleading or entirely untrue. The key takeaway here is that suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from the meaning we assign to those events through our thoughts. Now, you might be wondering, if my thoughts are the cause of my suffering, how can I stop them? Let's move on to understand how to tackle this. The first arrow versus the second arrow: differentiating physical and emotional pain. Nguyen introduces a concept borrowed from Buddhist teachings: the first arrow and the second arrow. This concept is vital for understanding how our minds contribute to unnecessary suffering. Imagine this: you're walking in a forest and accidentally step on a sharp thorn. That sharp pain you feel immediately is the first arrow. It's unavoidable, it's the physical pain that comes with the situation. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The second arrow is your emotional reaction to the pain. Maybe you start thinking, why am I so clumsy? Or why do bad things always happen to me? Or this is going to ruin my whole day. This second arrow is entirely self-inflicted. It's not the thorn causing your suffering now, it's your thoughts about the thorn. In our daily lives, we experience countless first arrows, things like setbacks at work, conflicts with friends, financial stress, or even getting stuck in traffic. These are unavoidable. But the second arrow, the emotional turmoil we create in response, is optional. Nguyen's key teaching here is that while we cannot avoid pain, we can choose whether or not we want to suffer. We don't have to throw that second arrow at ourselves. This principle can be applied to every aspect of life. If we stop adding layers of emotional distress to situations by overthinking or assuming the worst, we immediately reduce our suffering. How the mind tricks us, believing in the false narratives we create. Our minds are incredibly powerful, but they are also deeply flawed when it comes to interpreting reality. Nguyen emphasizes that the mind's job is not necessarily to make us happy, it's to keep us safe. And sometimes, in its attempt to protect us, the mind creates stories that aren't true. Let me explain this with a relatable example. Let's say you text a friend, and they don't reply for hours, or maybe even a day. What does your mind do? It immediately jumps to conclusions: they must be upset with me, I must have done something wrong, or maybe they don't value our friendship anymore. Suddenly, you're filled with anxiety, self-doubt, and even resentment, all because of a story your mind made up. In reality, your friend might simply be busy, or perhaps they saw the message, but forgot to respond. The point is, our thoughts are often inaccurate reflections of reality. Yet, we believe them as if they are absolute truth, leading to unnecessary emotional suffering. Nguyen encourages us to recognize these mental traps. When you notice your mind jumping to conclusions or spiraling into negative thoughts, pause and question those thoughts. Ask yourself, is this thought really true? Often, you'll find that it's just a story you've created. This practice of questioning your thoughts is key to breaking free from the mind's grip and finding peace. The negativity bias, why we focus more on the bad than the good. Now, let's talk about something that many of us experience, without even realizing it, the negativity bias. This is a psychological phenomenon that causes us to focus more on negative experiences than positive ones. Nguyen explains that the negativity bias is a survival mechanism that helped our ancestors stay alive. Thousands of years ago, humans needed to be hypervigilant about threats in their environment, whether it was a predator, a dangerous situation, or a lack of resources. Our brains evolved to focus more on what could go wrong as a way to protect us from danger. But here's the problem, in today's world, we're not running from predators or hunting for food in the wild. Yet, our brains still default to focusing on the negative. We obsess over minor problems, anticipate worst-case scenarios, and dwell on things that upset us, even when there's no real threat. Have you ever noticed how one bad comment can ruin your day, even if you received dozens of positive ones? That's the negativity bias at work. And the more we focus on the negative, the more it shapes our mood and outlook on life. Nguyen teaches us to become aware of this bias and counteract it by deliberately focusing on the positive. He's not suggesting that we ignore our problems, but rather that we balance our perspective. If we're constantly fixating on what's wrong, we miss out on all the things that are going right. Gratitude is a powerful tool to combat negativity bias. By regularly practicing gratitude, whether it's through journaling or simply reflecting on the good things in your life, you can rewire your brain to notice and appreciate the positive. The cycle of overthinking, how we trap ourselves in mental loops. One of the major themes of Don't Believe Everything You Think is the concept of overthinking and how it keeps us trapped in a cycle of stress, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. Let's face it, most of us are guilty of overthinking at some point. You make a small mistake at work, and suddenly, your mind starts racing. What if I get fired? What if I never find another job? What if I can't pay my bills? Overthinking turns a minor issue into a major crisis, and before you know it, you're stuck in a loop of worry and fear. Nguyen argues that overthinking doesn't lead to solutions, it only amplifies our stress. The mind tries to solve problems by thinking them through, but in doing so, it often creates new problems that didn't exist in the first place. Imagine your mind as a hamster wheel. When you overthink, you're like the hamster running endlessly on the wheel, getting nowhere, but exhausting yourself in the process. Overthinking doesn't give us clarity, it clouds our judgment and distorts reality. The more we engage in it, the more anxious and stressed we become. So, how do we break free from the cycle of overthinking? Nguyen suggests a two-step approach: awareness and redirection. The first step is to become aware when you're overthinking. Simply noticing that your mind is stuck in a loop is powerful. The second step is to redirect your focus. This can be as simple as taking a few deep breaths, focusing on the present moment, or engaging in an activity that grounds you. One technique Nguyen recommends is called thought distancing. When you catch yourself overthinking, mentally say to yourself, I am having the thought that. For example, I am having the thought that I might lose my job. This creates distance between you and the thought, helping you see it for what it is, just a thought, not reality. The present moment, finding peace in the now. One of the most transformative teachings in Don't Believe Everything You Think is the importance of living in the present moment. Nguyen emphasizes that our thoughts often pull us into the past or project us into the future, creating unnecessary suffering. The mind loves to dwell on past mistakes or worry about future problems. But when you live in the past or future, you miss out on the peace that exists in the present. Nguyen explains that true peace and happiness can only be found in the present moment because it's the only moment that truly exists. When you're fully present, you're not ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. You're simply experiencing life as it is, without the extra mental baggage. For example, when you're washing the dishes, rather than thinking about that argument you had earlier or worrying about tomorrow's meeting, you can focus on the sensation of the water on your hands, the sound of the dishes clinking, the feeling of completing a simple task. This might seem insignificant, but when you practice being fully present in everyday activities, you free yourself from the mind's constant chatter. Nguyen also points out that the present moment is where you have the most control. You can't change the past, and you can't predict the future, but you can make choices in the here and now that positively impact your life. By learning to anchor yourself in the present, you stop giving your mind the power to drag you into emotional suffering. So how do we cultivate this present moment awareness? One effective method is mindfulness meditation. Through mindfulness, you practice observing your thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them. You allow yourself to simply be, without judgment or resistance, which helps you develop a sense of inner calm and balance. The illusion of control, letting go of what you can't change. Another key theme in Don't Believe Everything You Think is the illusion of control. Nguyen explains that much of our suffering comes from the belief that we can, and should, control every aspect of our lives. We think that if we can just plan enough, worry enough, or try hard enough, we can make everything turn out the way we want. But the truth is, life is unpredictable. No matter how hard we try, there are always things outside of our control, whether it's other people's actions, unexpected challenges, or random events. When we cling to the illusion of control, we set ourselves up for disappointment and frustration. We waste energy trying to force outcomes, rather than accepting things as they are. Nguyen encourages us to let go of this need for control and to trust the natural flow of life. Letting go doesn't mean giving up, it means recognizing the limits of what you can influence and focusing on what you can actually change. For instance, you can't control how others behave, but you can control how you respond. You can't predict the future, but you can make choices in the present that align with your values. By releasing the need to control everything, you free yourself from anxiety and stress. You learn to flow with life's ups and downs, rather than resisting them. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent, it means you approach life with a sense of calm and openness, knowing that no matter what happens, you can handle it. Nguyen also stresses the importance of surrendering to uncertainty. Life is inherently uncertain, and trying to predict or control every outcome only leads to more stress. Instead, embracing uncertainty allows you to live with greater flexibility and resilience. Self-awareness, recognizing when your thoughts are unhelpful. Self-awareness is a recurring theme in Nguyen's work. In order to free yourself from negative thought patterns, you first need to become aware of them. This means paying close attention to your inner dialogue and noticing when your thoughts are leading you down a path of anxiety, fear, or overthinking. For example, you might catch yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough for this job," or "no one cares about me." These thoughts often arise automatically, without you even realizing it, but they have a profound impact on your emotions and actions. The first step in breaking free from these negative thought loops is simply to recognize them. Once you've identified a negative thought, the next step is to question its validity. Is it really true? What evidence do you have to support this thought? Often, you'll find that these thoughts are based on assumptions or fears, not facts. Nguyen encourages us to practice self-compassion during this process. It's easy to get frustrated with yourself when you realize how often your mind leads you astray. But rather than judging yourself, it's important to approach your thoughts with kindness and curiosity. Remember, everyone experiences negative thoughts, it's part of being human. The goal is not to eliminate all negative thoughts, but to become better at recognizing and managing them. Breaking the habit of overthinking, practical steps. In the final sections of the book, Nguyen offers practical advice on how to break the habit of overthinking. One of the most powerful tools is mindfulness. When you notice yourself getting caught up in a cycle of overthinking, take a moment to pause. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and bring your attention to the present moment. Focus on the sensations in your body, the sound of your breath, or the feeling of your feet on the ground. This simple act of grounding yourself can help disrupt the cycle of overthinking and bring you back to the here and now. Another technique Nguyen suggests is to set aside specific times for problem solving. If you find yourself ruminating over an issue, tell yourself that you'll dedicate time to think about it later, say, 15 minutes in the evening. This helps prevent your mind from constantly obsessing over problems throughout the day. When it's time for your problem-solving session, you may find that the issue doesn't seem as overwhelming as it did in the heat of the moment. Nguyen also recommends developing healthy coping mechanisms, such as journaling, physical exercise, or engaging in creative activities. These outlets give your mind a break from overthinking and allow you to process your emotions in a constructive way. Final thoughts: embracing the freedom of not believing everything you think. In the final chapter, Nguyen ties everything together by reinforcing the book's core message: you don't have to believe everything you think. Just because a thought enters your mind doesn't mean it's true or worthy of your attention. You have the power to observe your thoughts without getting caught up in them. By practicing mindfulness, questioning your thoughts, and focusing on the present moment, you can free yourself from the constant mental chatter that leads to stress and emotional suffering. You can choose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and acceptance over resistance. Nguyen leaves us with a powerful reminder: the mind is a tool, but it is not the master. When you learn to observe your thoughts without identifying with them, you create space for peace, happiness, and a deeper sense of well-being. And that, my friends, is the key to unlocking a more peaceful and fulfilling life. Outro. That wraps up today's in-depth summary of Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen. I hope you found these insights as powerful as I did. If you're someone who struggles with overthinking or negative thoughts, I highly recommend picking up this book and applying these concepts in your own life. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more book summaries that can change your life. Let me know in the comments below which idea from today's video resonated with you the most, and feel free to share your own experiences with overthinking and finding peace. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.